about Lilo and Stitch, the dog show. Lilo and Stitch, the dog show. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean and on the little island of Kauai, there lived a girl named Lilo and her pet Stitch. Lilo was no ordinary girl. She loved doing everything her own way, and Stitch was no ordinary pet. He was an alien from outer space. Every weekend, Lilo went to a dance class with the other girls from her town while Stitch waited patiently outside. But today was different today. There was another pet waiting outside with Stitch. When dance class was over, Lilo's classmate Myrtle introduced Lilo and Stitch to her new dog. Her name is Casimir. She's a
purebred
poodle. Myrtle schooled down at Stitch, who was eating a scoop of ice cream off the sidewalk. Reading is so important when it comes to pets, she said. Lilo was embarrassed. She tried to ignore the mean things Myrtle said to her and Stitch, but it wasn't easy. Stitch might not be like other dogs, but he's really smart, Lilo said. Just then, Stitch started rolling around in the melted ice cream. If Stitch is so smart, Myrtle said, prove it. She handed Lilo a flyer. There's a dog show next weekend. Casimir and I are planning to win, and we'd love to beat you and Stitch. Myrtle waved as she and Casimir strutted away. Lilo and Stitch both growled, and Lilo crumpled the flyer into a tight ball. Stitch nuzzled against Lilo. He glanced around to see if anyone could hear him bully, he said, but Lilo was already smoking out the dog show flyer. I'm tired of Myrtle being mean to us. Let's show her and Casimir what we can do, Stitch. Stitch looked at Lilo and then nodded for Lilo. The next weekend, Lilo and Stitch showed up at the dog show. They were ready, at least. They hoped they were, but as the judges let everyone into the stage, Lilo started to get nervous. She was glad her sister Nanny had come along to cheer them on. Welcome everyone, a friendly man with a microphone announced. Let's start the show with a classic. The man gestured to a row of hoops. Whichever dog can clear these hoops the fastest will win this roundup. First, Lilo and her dog Stitch. Lilo side up the rings. It would be a tight fit, but she was sure Stitch could zoom through them. Go, Stitch, go! Lilo shouted. Stitch took a deep breath and then ran toward the rings. He grabbed the first ring and immediately shoved it in his mouth. He managed to swallow it whole and then jumped down the next 4 rings. He ran happily back to Lilo and whispered, "Clear." "No, Stitch," Lilo sighed. "You were supposed to jump through the rings." Stitch's ears dropped. "Sorry," he burped, and then looked back at the shocked audience. "Well, that's one way to clear rings," the man with the microphone said. "It's a good thing we have some extra rings for our next contestant. Soon, the extra rings were set up. Cashmere sped through them and happily bounded back to Myrtle. "It's okay, Stitch," Lilo said. "We have 2 events left. We can still win." Stitch nodded eagerly. On to the next challenge, the man with the microphone shouted as the judges placed 3 tubes in a zigzag shape on the ground. In order to complete this event, each dog must run through the 3 tubes to get to the other side of the course. Lilo and Stitch were up first again. "I know you can do this, Stitch," Lilo said. "Just try not to eat anything." Stitch licked Lilo playfully and got into position. "Ready, set, go," the man with the microphone yelled. Like a bullet, Stitch shot out from the starting line and ran toward the first tunnel, but instead of running inside the tube, the powerful alien smashed through the sides of each tube, running in a straight line from one side of the course to the other. Stitch crossed the finish line and looked back at the judges proudly. Then she saw Lilo holding her head. Stitch hung his head. He knew he must have done something wrong. It's okay. Come here, boy, Lilo called to Stitch. Once Stitch reached her, Lilo said, I don't think they're going to give us any points for that one, but we still have one event left. Stitch watched sadly as Cashmere easily navigated the extra tubes. She and Myrtle had so many points, there was no way for Leo and Stitch to win now. The last challenge was to cross a balance beam. They don't have an extra balance beam, so you have to go last, Myrtle told Lilo. Lilo wanted to say something mean back to Myrtle, but she took a deep breath instead. Good luck, Cashmere, she said, though
True. Greeted
teeth. Lilo watched as Cashmere crossed the balance beam. She was perfect. One of the judges even said she'd never seen a dog with more poise. Lilo said, and Stitch waited for every other dog to cross the beam. Finally, it was Stitch's turn. Okay, Stitch, run as fast as you can, Lilo said. Stitch nodded and raced toward the beam. One quick hop and he was already halfway across the thin platform. He turned back to smile at Lilo, but as he did, he tripped on the beam. Stitch scratched at the side of the beam. Most dogs would have fallen off the side, but Stitch was no dog. He used his alien arms to keep crawling along the bottom of the beam instead. The crowd gasped as Stitch
dismounted
on the outer side. I think we'd better go, Lilo said quickly. Lilo ran to Nanny and asked her to take them home. Don't you want to stay for the results? Nanny asked. Lilo shook her head. No, I think we all know who's going to win. She watched as one of the judges rushed to shake Myrtle's hand. Stitch whimpered beside Lilo. He felt bad for not doing better at the show. "It's okay, Stitch," Lilo said. "It was my fault. I should have given better instructions." Nanny watched as Lilo hugged Stitch. That night, Nanny tucked Lilo and Stitch into bed. "Don't laugh, but I made you something," she said. Nanny pulled out 2 large flat rocks wrapped in shiny tin foil. "They're supposed to be medals," she said, blushing. Lilo and Stitch turned the rocks over. On the backs, Nanny had written their names and the words, "Most creative, you did finish all the challenges. You just did them in your own way." "Thank you, Nanny," Lilo said, giving her sister a hug. "Yes, thanks for Nanny," Stitch said, joining the hug. He may not have won the dog show, but he had something even better, a family that loved him no matter what. The end. The lesson of the story is about being sports. Even when you lose, as long you finish the challenges, it's okay. If somebody's bullying you, ignore them and take a deep breath. I hope you like my story today. Like and subscribe.